They used to welcome Americans with open arms, rolling out red carpets and offering long-term visas, investment perks, and diplomatic privileges. But in 2025, something has changed dramatically. Powerful countries are no longer just closing their doors. They're pushing Americans out. From revoked agreements to visa cancellations and forced removals, the global mood has shifted. This isn't about isolated tensions or random policy changes. It's a coordinated wave of political recalibration, economic pushback, and diplomatic retaliation. The U.S. passport once symbolized opportunity, but now it's raising red flags. And what's happening behind the scenes is even more intense than what the headlines are showing. Americans are being told to leave, sometimes quietly, sometimes with full-blown media coverage, and it's affecting everyone from tourists to diplomats to longtime expats. Security alliances are dissolving, business deals are collapsing, and trust is eroding fast. Here are the 10 countries kicking out Americans in record numbers and what it really means for the future. Number 10. Niger. Niger shocked global observers in 2024 when its military-led government revoked a long-standing security agreement and ordered U.S. troops to leave immediately. What started as a diplomatic disagreement escalated quickly into a full-blown expulsion of American personnel, contractors, and affiliated aid workers. In 2025, those policies remain firmly in place and have expanded beyond military ties. Once a strategic partner in counterterrorism, Niger now views the U.S. presence as a liability, not an asset. Anti-American sentiment has grown, fueled by nationalist rhetoric and regional alliances shifting away from Western influence. Local protests and government statements have made it clear Americans are no longer welcome. This isn't just about military exit. It includes visa denials, canceled NGO programs, and delayed permits for journalists and development teams. Americans in Niger report increased scrutiny, harassment, and difficulty renewing legal status. The message from the top is being enforced on the ground. According to reports from the U.S. Department of Defense, nearly 2,100 American troops and civilian personnel have been affected by the expulsion orders. Local embassies now warn against non-essential travel and advise all remaining U.S. citizens to reconsider their stay. Niger has made its decision, and it isn't backing down. We're just getting started. The next country on this list holds far more global power, and it's not just kicking Americans out, it's rewriting the rules entirely. Number 9. Russia. Russia has intensified its stance against American presence, with 2025 marking a significant uptick in expulsions, entry denials, and diplomatic freezes across the board. The Kremlin has drastically reduced visa approvals for U.S. citizens, citing national security concerns amid rising geopolitical tension. For many Americans, Russia has become completely inaccessible. According to the U.S. State Department, over 800 Americans were denied entry or deported from Russia in the past 18 months, a record high in post-Cold War history. This includes journalists, NGO workers, business consultants, and even students attending language programs. Americans are now being flagged automatically at airports and border crossings. Diplomatic ties are almost non-existent, with embassy services operating on emergency protocols only and several U.S. consulates shut down entirely. Expats living in Russia report being targeted by increased surveillance, police visits, and questioning about affiliations or political beliefs. Even short-term visitors are treated with suspicion. Social media activity and online history are now routinely scanned by Russian authorities as part of visa applications and immigration checks. Any perceived anti-Russian sentiment, even if years old, can result in immediate expulsion. The digital paper trail is being used as a weapon. And the next country on this list. It may be a major economic partner of the United States, but right now, it's treating Americans like liabilities, not allies. Number 8. China. China has pivoted hard in 2025, shifting from cautious diplomacy to aggressive containment of American influence across all levels of society. New exit bans, prolonged visa processing, and tightened surveillance are forcing Americans, especially business professionals and students, to leave in large numbers. The welcome mat has been replaced with red tape. According to the American Chamber of Commerce in China, 38% of U.S. companies reported losing American staff due to recent regulatory crackdowns and travel disruptions. Several executives have been detained for questioning, and others face restricted movement under vague national security clauses. The business environment has become dangerously unpredictable. Academic programs and cultural exchanges are being halted, with many American students pulled from campuses due to increasing safety concerns. Professors report growing difficulty renewing teaching permits, while research partnerships are being terminated without warning. China is systematically severing educational ties. The Chinese government has expanded its list of flag topics, including Taiwan, Hong Kong, and military matters, turning even casual conversation into a potential legal issue. Americans have reported being approached by authorities after social media posts or comments made in private emails. You're always being watched. Hit that subscribe button because the next country is using deportation not just as policy, but as punishment. And it's happening at record speed. Number 7. Turkey. Turkey's relationship with the United States has grown increasingly strained, and in 2025, Americans are facing deportation, visa rejections, and heightened monitoring like never before. The Turkish government has accused several U.S.-linked organizations of political interference and subversion, resulting in a surge of expulsions. Even tourists are beginning to feel the chill. According to Human Rights Watch, more than 300 Americans have been detained or deported from Turkey since mid-2023 under broad anti-terrorism laws. Many of them had no criminal history or political involvement whatsoever. Their only offense? Holding a U.S. passport during unstable times. Several U.S.-affiliated schools and NGOs have been shuttered, and staff members were given just days to leave the country. Journalists, missionaries, and dual citizens are particularly vulnerable to accusations of espionage or disinformation. The environment is unpredictable and increasingly hostile. Digital surveillance has expanded dramatically, and visa applicants now face extensive background checks, social media screening, and even phone content inspections. The Turkish state has shown little tolerance for dissent or foreign affiliations that could be framed as suspicious. Americans are being treated as potential threats rather than visitors. But the next country, it's using Americans as literal bargaining chips, and the numbers are climbing faster than anyone expected. Number 6. Iran. Iran has long been hostile to American citizens, but in 2025, the situation has reached unprecedented levels of severity and urgency. Dual nationals, aid workers, and travelers have been arrested without charges and held in secret prisons for months or even years. Americans are increasingly seen as leverage in geopolitical disputes. Data from the U.S. State Department shows that at least 15 Americans were detained in Iran during the past 12 months alone, many under accusations of espionage. These detainments often involve closed-door trials, no legal representation, and zero access to consular support. Families are left waiting, helpless and unheard. Even casual visitors are at risk, especially those with any social media history critical of Iran or its leadership. Photos, tweets, and old blog posts have been used to justify arrests. Travelers are being judged long before they even arrive. The U.S. has issued a Level 4 Do Not Travel advisory for Iran, warning of arbitrary arrest, extended detention, and politically motivated charges. Those who ignore it do so at their own peril. Once you're in, getting out may not be up to you. Stick around, because the next country is doing something we haven't seen in decades, publicly naming and shaming Americans before kicking them out. Number 5. Venezuela. Venezuela has become a high-risk zone for Americans, with 2025 seeing a spike in detentions, forced removals, and outright visa rejections for U.S. passport holders. The Maduro regime accuses American visitors of espionage, sabotage, and subversion, even when there's no credible evidence. Simply being American is now grounds for suspicion. According to the Wilson Center, at least 12 Americans were detained in Venezuela over the last year, many without formal charges or legal proceedings. These cases involve aid workers, business professionals, and dual citizens caught in political power struggles. The U.S. has no functional embassy in Caracas to intervene directly. Flights between the U.S. and Venezuela remain suspended, making it difficult to leave quickly if trouble arises. Travelers entering via third countries are often tracked or questioned upon arrival. The risk begins the moment your passport is scanned. Americans with family ties to Venezuela report harassment during visits, while journalists face surveillance, censorship, and threats of prosecution under vague national security laws. Visa denials are rising across all sectors, even humanitarian organizations. You're not just unwelcome, you're considered a liability. And coming up next is a country where even the idea of freedom of speech can get you kicked out faster than you arrived. Number 4. Egypt. Egypt has ramped up expulsions and visa cancellations for Americans, especially those affiliated with nonprofits, media outlets, or religious organizations. In 2025, the Egyptian government is cracking down on foreign influence under the guise of national security and public order. The result is growing hostility toward Americans on Egyptian soil. According to Freedom House, at least 200 foreigners, including dozens of Americans, have been denied entry or expelled from Egypt since 2023. Many had long-term visas or years of service in humanitarian work. Their removal came without warning, explanation, or recourse. The crackdown extends beyond activists or officials. Tourists are now being questioned about social media content, contacts inside Egypt, and previous travel history. Even something as minor as posting a political meme could spark an investigation. Egypt's digital surveillance net is wide and unforgiving. The U.S. Embassy in Cairo has issued repeated warnings, advising travelers to avoid discussing religion, politics, or civil society issues while in the country. Americans are increasingly advised to travel in groups and limit their time in politically sensitive areas. One wrong word could lead to detainment or deportation. But if you think Egypt is bad, the next country is doubling down on anti-American sentiment. With policies so extreme, it's become nearly impossible to stay there legally. Number 3. Cuba. In 2025, Cuba has returned to Cold War-era policies by tightening restrictions, denying visas, and expelling Americans under suspicion of political destabilization. Even family visits are being scrutinized. The island is pushing back harder than ever against U.S. influence. According to the Migration Policy Institute, U.S. travel authorizations to Cuba have dropped by more than 70% since 2022, with rejections at their highest level in decades. Many American visitors are being stopped, questioned, or turned away at Havana's airport without clear justification. Tourism is no longer tolerated as neutral. Cuban authorities are especially hostile toward dual nationals, journalists, and humanitarian staff, many of whom have been interrogated, detained, or expelled. Accusations range from spreading propaganda to collecting sensitive data. No trial, no defense, just removal. Hotels linked to military-run companies are now off-limits for Americans, making it harder to legally book accommodations or navigate basic services. Credit card usage is also restricted under both U.S. and Cuban sanctions. Even travel logistics are becoming traps. And if you thought Cuba was tough, wait until you hear what's happening in this next country, where Americans are now viewed as national security threats. Number 2. Belarus. Belarus has escalated its authoritarian crackdown, and Americans have become one of the regime's newest targets for arrest, surveillance, and forced departure. Even routine travelers are being flagged and interrogated. The climate is extremely dangerous for U.S. citizens. Human Rights Watch reports that over 500 foreigners have been expelled or denied entry since late 2023, including dozens of Americans accused of spreading Western propaganda. The reality: most were tourists, researchers, or expats with no political involvement. Being American is enough to get you blacklisted. U.S.-funded NGOs have been banned, and affiliated staff were given only 48 hours to leave or face criminal prosecution. Reporters covering civil unrest or elections have been detained at border checkpoints and denied legal support. Belarus is openly rejecting diplomatic norms. Even indirect connections, such as past employment with American companies or public criticism of the Lukashenko government, have triggered passport seizures and forced removals. Digital data is being scanned at entry points for any perceived offenses. Once flagged, you're unlikely to return. We're almost there. The number 1 country on this list isn't just pushing Americans out, it's criminalizing their presence completely. And the implications are terrifying. Number 1. North Korea. North Korea has always been dangerous for Americans, but in 2025, it has become one of the only countries where U.S. citizenship is treated as a crime. The regime has declared all American nationals unwelcome security threats, banning entry and expelling remaining foreign aid workers. Even those with diplomatic clearance are no longer safe. The U.S. State Department confirms that all American travelers are now prohibited under federal regulation, citing extraordinary risks of arbitrary detention and hostage diplomacy. Past incidents include forced confessions, lengthy prison sentences, and torture. The threat is immediate and unrelenting. In one recent case, a dual citizen aid worker was seized without warning and paraded on state television before being sentenced to 10 years of hard labor. His alleged crime: attempting cultural infiltration. North Korea's courts do not recognize international law or outside representation. No U.S. embassy exists in Pyongyang, and Sweden's consular services offer limited support in rare emergency cases. If you're detained, you're on your own, without communication, trial, or rescue. It's not just travel risk, it's geopolitical hostage roulette. And that's why North Korea sits at the top of this list. It's the most extreme example of what happens when diplomacy collapses and citizens pay the price. Across the globe, the American passport is facing new resistance, from visa restrictions and political retaliation to outright expulsions and threats of imprisonment. Once seen as a symbol of global mobility, it's now a lightning rod for backlash. And in 2025, the pattern is clear. Whether driven by shifting alliances, authoritarian crackdowns, or unresolved diplomatic feuds, these countries are rewriting the rules, and Americans are caught in the fallout. This isn't theory, it's already happening. If you're planning to travel, pay attention. If you found this video eye-opening, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to know what's really going on. We'll keep uncovering the facts behind the headlines, so you're always one step ahead. Stay alert, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.